he should go to jail. Okay, I gotta chill. I'm gonna chill, otherwise I'm gonna lose my shit, and then I can't finish this video. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. Today's video is going to be another makeup and history. Makeup and History is a series here on my channel where I put on makeup while talking about a historical event, a scandal from the past, or just a person that I find interesting. In my last video, I talked about Ronald Reagan. This is going to be Ronald Reagan Part 2, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize right now, you guys. I'm sorry. This video should have been out a lot sooner, but a lot's been going on in my life. As you can see, I'm in a different room. I'm in a different country. A lot's happened. I do have a life update video that I think will be out before this video, but if it comes out after, just know if you're interested in knowing what I've been doing, I have a video for that as well. So I sincerely apologize that this video is so late. I've been seeing a lot of you guys' messages. Y'all have really been coming at me for this video. Like, dang. Dang. But we're here, we're doing it today. If you haven't already and you would like to, please subscribe to my channel. Join us. I try to post whenever I can, you know? I'm gonna get more consistent. I keep saying that because I believe it. Turn on the notification bell so that you're notified every time I do upload a video. And make sure you're following me on other platforms. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. I'm around. Alright, you guys, let's put on some makeup and get into this story. All of the products and everything that I'm using will be listed down in the description box below as usual. And if I get anything incorrect in this video, please feel free to fact check me in the comments below, as well as include any additional information that I don't say or I forget to say. If you're ever curious where I get my information from, I always link the sources in the description box as well. Alright, so if you haven't seen Ronald Reagan Part 1 yet, to summarize that video a little bit, we talked about his early life, the start of his presidency, and Reaganomics, which I honestly have to stop saying that word, you guys, because I can feel my blood pressure rise every single time I say it. Every time I say it, I get hot. So in Part 1, we talked about how Reagan really wanted to cut funding for domestic programs that he felt were unnecessary in the United States. These programs included things like welfare, food stamps, the public education system, really anything that helped low-income and poor families. He believed if you helped the poor, they would just stay poor. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because it's preposterous. Like, the main reason he wanted to cut the funding for these programs was because he believed if you helped poor people, they would remain poor. But at the same time, he believed cutting taxes for the rich would help them give back to the poor. So he cut taxes for the rich, helping rich people get richer, but he also helped poor people get poorer. He was a shitty fucking president, you guys. If you haven't seen Part 1 yet, go watch Part 1. I break it all down over there. The main reason he says he wanted to cut funding for all these programs was because he thought this money would be better allocated to defense systems. He wanted to focus more on war and defense. But even though he wanted to spend more money on the military and defense, a lot of the stuff he wanted to do, Congress said no, so he had to do it illegally. He started using the CIA and doing all these secret covert operations overseas, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about how Ronald Reagan was a criminal. He broke all the laws. We're going to start this story in about 1985, and don't worry guys, I'm going to do a time machine ride a little later on. I know, people start freaking out whenever I don't immediately get in the time machine. We don't need to get in the time machine right now. But we will. Alright, so we're back in 1985. Everyone is wearing hella blush and blue eyeshadows. Ronald Reagan has just finished his campaign for re-election, and he won by a landslide. He was very, very popular. During his re-election, though, some shady things started popping up about Reagan. For one, people started questioning whether or not he was still fit to lead because he kind of seemed a little bit aloof.
There are a host of other figures that reveal that all of the programs of human service.
He was starting to appear a little bit out of it in presidential debates. Some people speculated whether or not he might have had Alzheimer's, which he did. They would find out later, but he denied it at the time. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm good. In one of the presidential debates, Ronald Reagan accidentally slips up and kind of admits to a crime that he and his administration are being accused of.
We have a gentleman down in Nicaragua who is on contract to the CIA, advising supposedly on military tactics the Contras.
Well, Mr. President, you are implying then that the CIA in Nicaragua is directing the Contras there.
I'm afraid I misspoke when I said a CIA head in Nicaragua. There's not someone there directing all of this activity.
Everyone heard it, but he tried to quickly correct himself, and then everyone just kind of forgot about it, because at this time Ronald Reagan was still very much the charming dad. He was a really beloved president. He was very, very charming. Honestly, when I was watching back some of the clips, I would laugh at some of the stuff he said. He was very funny. And then I get pissed at myself. I'm like, no, don't laugh at him. No.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience.
He was a very likable guy, so I think that's part of the reason he was able to get away with all the things he got away with, because he was so charming. You couldn't help but like him. No, he was a bitch. So he has this slip up at the debate, and the American people just kind of let it go. But some of the journalists who were already investigating his administration definitely took it as the admission of guilt that it was, and they start digging deeper. The journalists were looking into an international conspiracy about the Reagan administration. The international conspiracy, if true, would mean that Reagan and his administration broke a plethora of laws. They broke all of the laws, and this would become known as the Iran Contra Affair. Some illegal shit was going down, illegal as fuck. Alright, I'm gonna break it down to you guys and let you know what happened. Now we have to get in the time machine, and we're in 1985 right now. We need to go back to about 1980. So let's go. We made it. We're in 1980, guys. Welcome. So early 1980 was the beginning of Reagan's presidency. He had just become president, and he was very open about the fact that he wanted to fight communism everywhere. That's kind of one of the things he ran his campaign on, fighting communism abroad. Reagan had learned about a group of anti-communists in Nicaragua called the Contras, and he became obsessed with them. He saw them as the founding fathers of Nicaragua. Well, no, he compared them to the founding fathers of America.
I've spoken recently of the freedom fighters of Nicaragua. You know the truth about them. You know who they're fighting and why. They are the moral equal of our founding fathers.
Something really dramatic like that. He became obsessed with this particular group, and he really wanted to help them. Now, if someone knows this better than me, please correct me if I'm wrong, but from my research, I found that the Contras were fighting the Sandinistas, another group in Nicaragua, and the Sandinistas were elected by the people. I'm not sure if they were communists or socialists or what their actual political views were, but the Contras were anti-communist, so they were trying to overthrow the Sandinistas, even though everyone elected them, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's also important to note that the Contras were terrible. They were terrorizing the Nicaraguan population. They killed over 40,000 people. They sexually assaulted nuns. They were not a good group. But Reagan kind of ignored all of that. All he cared was that they were fighting for democracy. That's all that mattered. So Reagan is open about the fact that he wants to help the Contras, but Congress is no, we're not going to get involved in another country where the people have decided that's who they want to rule. Why would you want to help a group that the people didn't vote for? That's not democracy. What are you talking about? Reagan. Congress is so serious about not helping the Contras, they pass an amendment that specifically, yes, they passed the Boland Amendment, which specifically says you cannot give money to the Contras. They said it flat out. You cannot help the Contras. Do not fund the Contras. The amendment prohibited the CIA or the Defense Department from getting involved. It was explicit. They said, no, we're not helping them. So Reagan is pissed by this. He gets really, really upset. He does not like being told what to do. He's like, I'm the president. I'm in charge. That's what Reagan said, I guess. So even though they were terrible and Congress said no, he decided he's going to do it anyway. And he tells his administration to figure it out. He's like, I don't care how you guys do it. Just do it. Figure out a way to give them money. We need to help these guys. They're the founding fathers. That's such a dramatic thing to say. What a drama queen. Well, he was an actor, so I guess the shoe fits. So Reagan goes to his high-ranking officials in his administration, and he tells them to get it done. He doesn't care how. Just do it. And they're like, all right, boss, we got you. Reagan wasn't the kind of leader who micromanaged the people under him. He would just kind of give them orders and then expect that they would get it done. He just trusted them to get it done. So it gave them a lot of flexibility to do whatever they wanted. So the members of his administration and people in the CIA get together and they're like, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to help the Contras? We need to send them money, but we can't use government money because Congress said no. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Guys, think. Then finally, I don't know exactly who it was, someone at the table was like, I got it. I got an idea. Why don't we sell drugs? Boom. And everyone's like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Okay. Sure. So the CIA puts together this group called the FDN, and the FDN stood for Fuerza Democrática Nicaraguense. I am so sorry. I want to formally apologize right now. I know that I really fucked that up. I will put the name on the screen so you guys know what I was trying to say. But in English, it stood for Democratic Nicaraguan Force. Democratic Nicaraguan Force. But they were called the FDN. So that's what I'll call them. So the CIA puts together the FDN, and the FDN consisted of refugees from Nicaragua who had come to the U.S. in the early 80s seeking refuge. They didn't agree with the Sandinistas, so they were exiled or they left or whatever. So they were already living in the States. And they start working with the Contras, who were still back in Nicaragua, to put together a plan to funnel money to try and take over. I also want to apologize if I say Nicaragua wrong. Nicaragua. You guys know what I'm saying. Anyways, the FDN members in Nicaragua start smuggling cocaine to the FDN members in the United States, and they start selling it and returning all the profits back to the Contras in Nicaragua. Once cocaine gets to the US, it's immediately a hit, and they start making a ton of money. So much money. I don't know because I wasn't there, but I've heard that cocaine in the 80s was like everywhere. Like everybody was doing that white stuff. You know what I'm saying? So everybody's doing cocaine in the 80s. Business was booming. One of the most prominent members in the FDN was a man named Oscar Blandón, and he would later testify that they made $54 million in 1 year. Oscar worked very closely with members in the CIA, and they used government officials to send the money back to Nicaragua. Oscar says that he knew for certain that the money they were making was supposed to be supporting the Contras, so majority of it was going to the Contras. He didn't know if all of it was, but a lot of it was. Oscar becomes one of the most notorious drug dealers the U.S. has ever seen. He says at the height of his career in the FDN, he was making $1 to $3 million a day. $1 to $3 million a day. Maybe I should start selling some drugs. I'm just kidding, YouTube. That was a joke, YouTube. Jesus Christ. Oscar becomes like a kingpin, and he starts selling large quantities to other drug dealers, and they start distributing it all over the place. They figure out a way to maximize profits by turning cocaine powder into crack or rock. I can't believe I'm talking about crack right now. This is Ronald Reagan's fault. They figure out a way to maximize profits by turning cocaine into crack, and crack is sold cheaper, so it's predominantly sold in poor and black neighborhoods. By the mid-1980s, crack and cocaine had become a really widespread addiction. It was becoming a real issue, so of course they go to the president and they're like, yo, people are doing this drug and it's getting out of control, like we need to do something about this. So Reagan, being the bitch-ass hypocrite that he was, decides to publicly blame the Sandinistas for smuggling cocaine into the U.S. The Sandinistas, again, were the opposition of the Contras. He blames the Sandinistas for smuggling cocaine, even though he knows it's the Contras and the CIA. Actually, he claims that he doesn't know. And maybe he didn't, again, because he kind of just let his team do whatever. But I think he did. If he didn't know what was going on, why would he automatically blame the other side? Because he was a bitch. That's why. So he blames the Sandinistas for smuggling the cocaine into the U.S. And then he and Nancy start the Just Say No to Drugs campaign, where Nancy is the face of the campaign, and she goes around the country telling the youth not to use the drugs that her husband's administration is smuggling into the country.
Our job is never easy because drug criminals are ingenious. They work every day to plot a new and better way to steal our children's lives, just as they've done by developing this new drug, crack.
They're so gross. But it gets worse. It gets worse. In 1986, Reagan passes the Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which starts criminalizing anyone who's using crack or cocaine. Because crack was used in predominantly poor and black neighborhoods, they started criminalizing people who used crack more than people who used cocaine, even though it was technically the same thing. And technically, no one would have access to it if Reagan didn't bring it into the country. He should go to jail. Okay. I gotta chill. I'm gonna chill, otherwise I'm gonna lose my shit. And then I can't finish this video. If you got caught using crack, you would get 3 years in jail, while someone caught with cocaine would only get 3 months, even though it was the same thing. More or less. There were some differences, but I'm not gonna get it. I'm done talking about crack. I don't wanna say it anymore. So the CIA and the FDN are continuing the drug business. They're making millions of dollars and they're sending it to the Contras. Everything is going great. It's highly illegal, but no one knows about it, so it's fine. Behind closed doors in the Reagan administration, there was a lot of fighting going on. A lot of the high-ranking officials disagreed with each other a lot. And Reagan, who again was a pretty hands-off leader, kind of just stayed out of it. He just let his staff do whatever. But Nancy Reagan was the one allegedly keeping the lid on things. I low-key believe that Nancy Reagan was the president. I think Ronald Reagan was just kind of a puppet to her.
Mr. President, the Soviets say that your position has made it impossible to meet in Vienna in September.
Doing everything we can. Doing everything we can.
That's just my theory. I can't prove it. But there's a lot of evidence to support it.
What is Mrs. Reagan's role in running the government, Mr. President?
That is fiction, and I think it is despicable fiction, and a lot of people ought to be ashamed of themselves.
Nancy Reagan was the president. Nancy kept a really close eye on everything that was happening in the White House. She worked really closely with Reagan's chief of staff, a man named James Baker, during his first term. And James would tell Nancy everything. Like, she knew everything. During Reagan's second term in 1985, he gets a new chief of staff, a man named Don Regan. And this is when everything just kind of crumbles. Don and Nancy did not get along at all. They did not like each other. When Don started working there, he told Nancy straight up, I don't like you, I don't work for you, don't talk to me. Like, he cut Nancy completely out.
He didn't give Nancy much reverence. As a matter of fact, he made the comment, I'm not hired to be the fucking chief of staff to the First Lady.
Her political antennae were far more sensitive than President Reagan's were.
Nancy, of course, was pissed by this, but there wasn't really anything she could do. She did her best to stay in the loop, but Don got her out, and this is when all the problems started, honestly, when Nancy wasn't in charge anymore, because Nancy was the president. Anyways, the same year that Don started was when the news broke that a terrorist group backed by Iran kidnapped 7 Americans, and they were holding them hostage.
The lives of 4 hostages, 3 of them Americans, are hanging on the edge of another deadline tonight in Lebanon.
One of the family members of the hostages kept calling the White House and asking them to do something about it. Everyone agreed that it was not a good idea to let Reagan speak to the hostage's family member. They knew if he spoke to the hostage's family member that he would want to do something about it. They said, we're not going to do that, don't do that. And it was Don's job to handle it, to make sure that that didn't happen. So the family member keeps calling, and Don decides he's tired of dealing with it, so he puts them through to the president. He does the one thing everyone said not to do. And, of course, after Reagan talks to the family member, he's like, we're going to get them back. I don't care what it takes. We're going to get them back. Just like everyone thought he would. So Reagan goes to his administration again and he says, listen, we got to get these hostages back. I don't care what it takes. Just get it done. Some of the members in his administration objected. They thought this was a terrible idea. They did not want to do it. But others were like, sure, yeah, sure. We're already doing hella illegal stuff. We're already corrupt AF. Let's do it. Let's do it, boss. So they decide they're going to bypass Congress on this because they want it done quickly. Get it done. It needs to be a secret. So that's what they do. Reagan's national security advisor at the time, a man named Robert McFarlane, gets together with a man named Oliver North and John Poindexter. I think that was his name. These men were all high-ranking officials in the administration, and they get together and come up with a plan. Iran was currently engaged in a war with Iraq, and the U.S. had a trade embargo with Iran. They were not trading anything with them at the time. Robert knew that Iran really wanted to get weapons from the U.S., so Robert comes up with a plan. He's like, why don't we offer this terrorist group the option to buy weapons from us in exchange for the hostages? We'll give them some grade A, made in America, USA weapons in exchange for people. It's a terrible plan. This is one of the worst plans I've ever heard in my life. So they reach out to the terrorist organization and tell them the offer. And of course, the terrorist group is like, yeah, okay, sure. We'll give you some hostages back if you sell us some weapons. Fine. So they set it all up. They send the terrorist group 1,500 American missiles and a bunch of guns for $30 million in exchange for 3 of the 7 hostages. They didn't even get all of the hostages back. They got 3 of them back. All right, guys, I'm going to put on my lashes really quickly and then I'll be right back. All right, we are back. So they make the deal with the terrorist group. Honestly, the terrorist group got an amazing deal. Like, they didn't even have to give back all of the hostages, and they got all of these weapons in order to do whatever they want with. Probably terrorize people. And the Reagan administration got $30 million and only 3 of the hostages back. And then they took the $30 million and gave $18 million from that 30 to the Contras. I don't know why the Contras needed more money, but I guess they did. So they took the money that they got from the Iranian terrorists and gave a little over half of it to the Contras. And this is why it's called the Iran Contra Affair, because it involved Iran and the Contras, both of which Reagan was explicitly told not to get involved in. He did both, and then he mixed them together. The entire deal took place in Lebanon. That's where the terrorist group was keeping the hostages. They were backed by Iran, but they were in Lebanon. A journalist in Lebanon finds out about the deal and publishes a story in a Lebanese newspaper. Once the story becomes public, it turns into the international conspiracy that we talked about earlier, and this is how American journalists find out about it, and they start investigating it as well.
It is taking shape as one of the most controversial foreign policy developments of President Reagan's years in office. The reports of a secret White House operation to ship Iran military supplies in exchange for help in freeing 3 American hostages.
Naturally, people start asking Reagan about it. They're like, did you sell weapons to terrorists? And Reagan's like, no.
In spite of the wildly speculative and false stories about arms for hostages and alleged ransom payments, we did not trade weapons or anything else for hostages. Nor will we.
He continues denying it every time he's asked, but he starts getting asked so much by the press, the same question over and over again, that he stops doing press conferences. He starts hiding from the press. Then the news starts leaking that not only did they sell the weapons to the terrorists, but they used part of the money they made to support the Contras.
Republicans and Democrats alike are calling it a crisis. Some call it a scandal, others a tragedy. Today's startling revelation that up to $30 million from the secret arms deal with Iran ended up in the hands of anti-government forces in Nicaragua, the Contras.
At this point, the administration starts freaking out. They're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So they start getting rid of all the evidence. Oliver North, one of the colonels involved in the deal, allegedly starts shredding all of the evidence. Anything that ties the two things together, he starts trying to shred it. Then the U.S. Attorney General's office starts looking into this, because if any of this is true, this would mean that Reagan and his administration broke so many laws, all of the laws, which they did. So they start investigating it, of course, and they find a paper trail. They find evidence that Reagan sold weapons and then used the money to help the Contras. They cracked the code. Ronald Reagan's bitch ass is still denying all of it. He's like, nah, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I didn't know anything about that.
President, we have a deal going with Iran.
No comment.
He continues denying any of this happened, but since the Attorney General's office found evidence, Oliver North is the first one to confess. The same guy who's allegedly shredded all this stuff, he confessed. He's the first one to snitch.
I did do it. I am not, as I said in my statement, at all ashamed of any of the things that I did. I was given a mission, and I tried to carry it out.
He's like, yeah, we did it. All of it's true, and Reagan knew about it. Reagan's like, no, I didn't. I didn't know. In November of 1986, the Senate gets involved, and they create the Tower Commission in order to investigate everything that's happened. So they open an investigation against Reagan and his administration to find out what they did. Meanwhile, back at the White House, Nancy is fuming. She's So pissed. This whole scandal is all anyone can talk about, and it's really tarnishing Reagan's reputation. For the first time, really throughout his entire presidency, the public is skeptical of him. Like, his legacy is getting ruined. Everything that Nancy worked so hard for is getting tarnished, and she blames Don.
Nancy Reagan begins to realize that impeachment is a real possibility here. She is single-handedly organizing the rescue effort. She decides that Don Regan has got to go.
Nancy blames Don because ever since he cut her out, the staff just ran amok. It's the chief of staff's job to keep everything under control, and Don did a terrible job. Don sucked, so Nancy gets him fired.
Well, Tom, a source very close to Mrs. Reagan told me today that Mrs. Reagan purposely leaked the story that she's no longer talking to Donald Reagan to try to force Donald Reagan out of the White House.
I mean, I guess low-key it kind of is Don's fault, low-key, but also he didn't make Reagan commit all these crimes. He did that on his own. Nancy blamed Don. Now, Don was really, really petty, and of course he's upset that Nancy gets him fired. So he decides to write a book. He writes a tell-all book in which he talks about his time at the White House.
The book portrays President Reagan as a hesitant and unassertive chief executive, controlled to a large extent by a scheming, image-conscious first lady who depended heavily on the predictions of an astrologer.
And this is how everyone discovers that Nancy uses an astrologer. I don't know what else he put in the book. I think he really just wanted to get back at Nancy.
If it is not a story about Mrs. Reagan or anyone else, if it's embarrassing to them, it's only because it's true history.
Back over at the Senate, the Tower Commission finishes their investigation, and they conclude that Robert McFarlane, Oliver North, and John Poindexter are all guilty of all of it. They're guilty of breaking the trade embargo, they're guilty of breaking the Boland Amendment, they're guilty of just being pieces of shit. They were guilty of everything. Now, the Tower Commission's final report doesn't say that Reagan actually did anything. They claim that his lack of oversight is what caused this to happen. Like, him not managing his staff well enough is why this happened. They claim he actually didn't know what was going on. So after the Tower Commission report comes out, Reagan gets on national television to address the nation, and he basically says, you guys, I know I said I didn't do it, but it turns out I guess I did. So I take full responsibility. I'm really sorry.
A few months ago, I told the American people I did not trade arms for hostages. My heart and my best intentions still tell me that's true, but the facts and the evidence tell me it is not.
He apologizes, and it actually works. Everything is better again. People forgave him. That was it. That's all it took. He just needed to say, I'm sorry. I think it just shows how far being charming and attractive will get you in society. Like, people are really willing to forgive anything if they like you. Like, if you appear to be a nice person, regardless of what you're doing or what you've done. If you appear to be friendly and charming, you can get away with murder. Literally. We really got to work on that as a nation, because there is no way after what he did, after what they found out to be true, all the crimes that he committed, he could just say sorry and everyone's like, all right, we forgive you. And he wasn't addressing or apologizing at all about the cocaine trade that he started in his administration. That wouldn't come out until after he was already done being the president. I can't, you guys. Oh my God. Before we finish off the series, I can't forget to mention the AIDS epidemic and how he handled that. Yeah, he basically denied it for almost a decade. Like 6 years, he just acted like it wasn't happening, even though thousands and thousands of people were dying. People were constantly asking him about it and asking if he would at least just speak up about it. And when he did speak up about it, he made really homophobic remarks. He would say things that implied the virus was a consequence of being gay. Because he and Nancy were in Hollywood, they were actors, so they had a lot of celebrity friends. Nancy had a lot of homosexual friends. Finally, they were pushed into talking about it. Elizabeth Taylor forced Ronald Reagan into actually speaking about it and doing something about it. But I don't think he would have had not been for that. I really don't think he would have cared at all. He let so many people die unnecessarily. So after he addressed the nation and apologized, Reagan continued his presidency with very high ratings. Reagan and his administration were the most corrupt administration on paper, documented evidence of all the terrible things they did, and still he was beloved. People loved him. He never paid for any of the crimes that he committed, nor did anyone in his administration. All of them were pardoned by either Reagan or George Bush Sr., who was Reagan's vice president and then became the president after Reagan left. So no one in the administration went to jail for all the things they did. No one in the CIA, none of the FDN members, nobody went to jail. The only people who did do jail time were the ones who did crack. So he was undebatably an awful president. What a piece of shit. But you know what? The more you know, right? Now we know these things. Hopefully we can try to prevent these kinds of things from happening now or in the future. I don't know. I honestly think that government and government officials have just gotten better at hiding because we have so much evidence of things that have happened in the past. Like, they've just gotten better at hiding things, you know? Richard Nixon got crucified for what he did, and it wasn't nearly as bad as what Reagan did. Not even close. But Reagan learned from Nixon what not to do, so he did that, and then each president just continues and continues. I don't know, you guys. The more I learn about history, the more it's really upsetting. It really is. But I'm staying positive. I'm staying positive. Doing my best. Woo-hoo-hoo. That's it for this video. Please leave me a comment and let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I really enjoy hearing you guys' thoughts on all of this. Give this video a big thumbs up because it helps me out so much, and I am certain that it's going to get demonetized, so please show it all the support that you can. The social webs don't like when we talk about serious things, even though they happened, right? Like, I'm not the one who sold drugs. Ronald Reagan sold drugs, and he got to be the president. But I can't talk about it on YouTube. I'm just kidding. But it is going to get demonetized, though. Anyways, leave me a comment down below. Give this video a big thumbs up. Stick around and watch some of my other content if you haven't already. I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.